And this is going to be, it's a little awkward when you want to disagree with someone on your side of the aisle, but I have to dramatically disagree with my colleague, Ms. Crockett, who used data and statistics and facts to claim that this is the least productive Congress in modern history. First of all, this Congress removed the Speaker, okay, which has never happened in the history of the Republic. That's clearly that's a big accomplishment in the 118th. This Congress took 15 rounds to even elect that Speaker that they then removed, right, which was historic in its own right. And then they removed a member of their own party. That hadn't happened in 20 years, so kudos to them. They've had a failed impeachment of a president. I don't think we've seen that happen in a really long time. This Congress did impeach a cabinet secretary, though, without meeting any constitutional threshold. We haven't seen that happen in 150 years. This Congress wants to hold Merrick Garland in contempt and then possibly arrest him. I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of the Republic. We've seen a failed motion to vacate to remove a second Speaker. Again, history in the 118th. And who could forget that this Congress, on behalf of the American people, saved gas stoves and ovens and toasters and blenders and dishwashers from the communist grip of energy standards. So I think Ms. Crockett was pointing out that this is least productive. These seem to be accomplishments on behalf of the American people that are clearly historic and may never be repeated in another Congress.
That was, of course, Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz doing what he does best, mocking the Republican Party. And in that committee room, you had James Comer being mocked, overseeing that hearing for the wildly unproductive nature of their time in the majority in the House of Representatives. Now, of course, Jared Moskowitz jokingly was making the opposite case, saying they've been a historic House. Republicans have been historic. Now, it just so happens all the ways they've been historic have been embarrassments. Now, there's reporting from ABC News to sort of bolster what Jasmine Crockett said before the response that you saw from Jared Moskowitz. ABC News reports lawmakers are halfway through the congressional session. This is from a few months ago. And it looks like it could be a historic one for the wrong reasons, according to congressional data. The 118th Congress is on track to being one of the least functional sessions ever, with only 34 bills passed since January of last year, the lowest number of bills passed in the first year of a congressional session since the Great Depression, according to congressional records. So then, to use Jared Moskowitz's list, what have they been up to? If they haven't been passing bills to hopefully eventually get signed into law to address issues facing the American people and improve their lives, what have they been doing? Well, they removed their speaker, Kevin McCarthy. That happened. That led to, or to even pick him, there was 15 rounds of votes, and then he ended up being removed. And they, of course, had to kick out Santos eventually. The embarrassment that he was, that investigation that we talked so much about into President Joe Biden, they said was going to lead to an impeachment and was going to horrify the American people with what they uncovered. Well, that ended in quite the humiliation. James Comer, as we talked about reportedly, was saying to colleagues that he hopes Jesus will come down to get him out of the tough situation he's in, being in between a rock and a hard place, where he's promised to find something and to get accountability when it comes to Biden based on this oversight investigation, but they haven't actually found anything. So he knows even the Republican House Majority, as often wild it seems to be, it wouldn't even want to impeach Biden in the House, much less a conviction in the Senate. So that fell on its face. Of course, they did impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, but that was just yet another political stunt trying to accuse Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas of doing things relating to the southern border that they're not doing, and these are false allegations. And even if we took their premise at face value, it'd be ridiculous to impeach someone over a policy disagreement. And they are trying to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. They had another failed motion to vacate the speaker with Mike Johnson, led by Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then he went through the list of gas stoves and ovens and toasters and blenders, because they've been having recently Appliance Week and trying to protect the appliances from Joe Biden's supposed war on appliances. Now, what they're referencing is they'll take these little, what should be uncontroversial stories about the Biden administration implementing or considering regulations that would protect the health of consumers, often lower costs for consumers by having the companies, the producers of these appliances, take certain steps to make them more efficient and, again, lower the cost for consumers. And they take that to mean that Biden's going to crawl through your window and grab your gas stove and run away with it. And that has been fear-mongering from MAGA. And that's sort of the story of this 118th Congress. Not a great one. We obviously missed a bunch of hearings pushing different ideas. But the serious part of this is that the House of Representatives has this unbelievably incredible power to do things for people, to improve people's lives. And so to think about all the days and weeks passing by where they're choosing to use their time and authority in those positions, not actually improving people's lives, uplifting people, that is really sad. But this is the inevitable outcome of MAGA taking over the Republican Party. Characteristically, what we've seen with this MAGA part of the party that's now the driving core is it's this personality cult. So if you're defining yourself by sort of the victimhood and the heroic nature of Trump, then that's not about policy and uplifting people. They're more concerned with these political stunts aimed at hurting President Biden politically or whoever it might be at that point in time than actual policy making. And then other than defining the movement by its loyalty to this one man in this personality cult sort of way, it's also defined by the opposition to the other side. And while, of course, in politics, you often are opposed to something, you also should be for something. And as much as Biden and the left right now are opposed, as we should be, to Trump in his threat to democracy, the ideology that MAGA stands for, there's also a lot of things that we're for. And the policy record in the first 2 years of Biden's presidency proves that, with all the different legislative successes I've gone through so many times in the past. Historic, like the Inflation Reduction Act, historic, like the infrastructure law, the gun safety bill, etc. These things are historic for the opposite reason that the 118th Congress or House has been historic. Then I'll add to this, and this has sort of lately been the thesis of my entire show, which is, yes, we're all being hurt by this. But Republican voters, the people enabling these individuals to be in power, you're also being hurt by this. I know it feels good when Marjorie Taylor Greene owns Hunter Biden or something, but at the end of the day, your life's not being made better because they're not legislating as they should. So stop giving them power, please. While we're on the subject of the House, here is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, getting asked about Trump's legal case, and essentially separate from the potential illegality involved in this. What about just the character that's emphasized by the allegations?
Any further? Yeah, money.
You've been very clear about your disdain for the hush money case, but what about the underlying alleged conduct of paying off a porn star to keep this extramarital affair allegedly quiet? You're a deeply religious man, a moral man. Does that alleged conduct cause you any concern about the former president's character?
Look, I'm not going to comment on that. What we've said about what's happening in Manhattan is I've called it a disgrace because it is. It's clearly lawfare. They're clearly going after President Trump because of who he is, because he is he'll soon to be officially the nominee of the Republican Party for president of the United States. They've had him tied up for weeks in a courthouse when he should be out, have the ability to speak freely and to campaign and to be around the country. This is clearly by design.
So I'll start by reading this response from Brian Tyler Cohen. Gonna state the obvious here, but if you claim to be a deeply religious man, a moral man, I don't know why I've started to do the inflections of Trump's speech whenever I read anything. A deeply religious man, and that has zero bearing on your absolute support for a sexual abuser, fraudulent con man currently contending with 88 criminal charges whose last act in office was to incite an insurrection, then in fact you are not a deeply religious man, a moral man. And that is interesting. I know that Manu Raju of CNN was sort of just framing the question in a way that Mike Johnson would identify with. You are such a religious, moral man, so how could you support Trump? But it is interesting because talk is cheap, as they say, but the actions of Mike Johnson, and honestly, the rhetoric of him too, doesn't show someone who's dedicated to character, to high character. He's supporting Donald Trump. Please. The family values you purport to stand for are constantly violated by the person who's going to be your nominee. So you can just cut it out with the posturing there, Mike. Make sure you're subscribed to this YouTube channel, and let me know what you thought of all that in the comments.